discussion program. We call it Moral Side of the News, and we're glad you're alongside this weekend. I'm John Blim with the WHAS Crusade for Children. With me, as always, is a distinguished panel this week. Reverend David Harkleroad, South Point Church, New Albany. Father Bill Hammer, St. Margaret Mary and St. William Catholic Churches. Rabbi Stan Miles, Louisville Melton School. And Dr. Jamesetta Ferguson, St. Peter's United Church of Christ and MOLO Village CDC. Welcome, panel. Off-year elections are in the books. Now experts predict the topics that will sway voters in 2024. For example, Ohio legalized marijuana and approved a constitutional amendment that ensures access to abortion. In a nationally watched race, Kentucky's Democratic Governor Andy Beshear won re-election, saying, quote, "Kentucky made a choice not to move to the right or to the left, but to move forward for every single family," end of quote. Will he stay in the governor's mansion for all 4 years or seek a higher office? I guess that's a big question. So panel, let's hear your thoughts on the post-election wrap-up. Who'd like to start?
I'm done with the commercials.
Yes.
I'm glad to see regular commercials, and I felt that many of the commercials on both sides of the aisle sadly generated an overabundance of heat and not much light. I'd like to hear what someone wants to do, not tying one person to one political figure or another political figure who has nothing whatsoever to do with the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and they were nonsensical and mean.
Actually, playfully, coming along with your comment about advertising, it's good that we're back now to where the FCC is monitoring truth in advertising. And it's one of the things it does. You can't advertise, falsely, but apparently that's not a responsibility during political campaign advertising. They don't measure the truthfulness, or you can put false things out. But I do think that while some of the conclusions people are drawing already, anticipating future elections, I do hope that some of the positive things that have come out of this will be part of that basis points. But on the other hand, heading into this election, everybody was predicting these kind of advertising, this kind of advertising, this, that, and a lot of it didn't materialize either. So I don't know if it sets a tone, but certainly I think hopefully people learn from the mistakes in these kind of campaigns and what a difference it does make. I do think one of the things that I'll be curious to get further analysis on, but from the people that clearly the choice was made in choosing intentionally a governor and the remainder of the state elected officials, and we were told that the race was Governor Beshear's until about a week out, that he was several points ahead, seemed pretty safe in that, and all of a sudden it's supposed to be narrow, very close. And then a certain new set of advertising happened the last 2 or 3 days, advertising the former president of the United States. And all of a sudden, the gap got pretty significant at that point, once again. And I wonder if that was a factor or not. So we'll be curious to see how that plays out in political analysis going down the road.
For me, the election has been clarifying and disappointing. I think clarifying partially because I think voters really indicated where they stand on abortion. This election, in many ways, I think turned out to be at least a signal of what we're going to see, what the voting base is standing for, and I think it just clarifies where people are at. But for that same reason, it's disappointing to me. As an evangelical Christian, as a leader in the evangelical church, this is one of our primary issues. We believe that babies in the womb are human beings, and we believe they're being murdered. And so we just take such a strong stand against abortion. And so for me, for the people I represent, this is an incredible loss. And it's an incredible loss that points forward to what is likely coming in next year's major election. And I would even just encourage our listeners, those viewing, if you identify as an evangelical Christian, I would encourage you to think about, to look at your beliefs and vote in alignment with those values. We would probably have a lot of people that went out and voted that passed these measures and put these folks into office they probably attend, many of them, evangelical churches. They probably attend churches like my church and would claim to hold those values. And I would just encourage our people to vote for the things that you say you believe in.
Oh, go ahead.
No, Jamesetta, please.
No, I am glad that, first of all, that the election is over because we have been inundated with false information for a long period of time, and for me, the right person won in Governor Brashear. I believe that he is a man of integrity, so I'm excited that he was reelected. Whether he stays 4 years or not, that's another question. But I think that he has been a fair governor, where he is seeking to bring people together as much as possible for a common cause. As far as the other with choice, pro-choice, I am also glad that that was victorious in Ohio because I believe people have a right to choose, women have a right to choose what is done for their bodies and their families, and so I am pleased that initiative was voted yes. But the concern that I have is the one for recreational use of marijuana, because that is one more substance I think that causes additional harm in our community. And so how can we be pro-life on one end and then approve those substances that are going to cause death, whether it be physical, spiritual, mental death on the other end. So anyway, overall, I'm pleased with what has happened in this election.
I was thrilled that Governor Brashear won a second term. I think he was highly, highly deserving of it. And it goes back to when we were coping with the pandemic. And I remember my wife and I watched him religiously every day at 4 o'clock because he gave us hope, clarity, and a path during a very, very difficult time. And I didn't see that from very many other governors, if any. Of course, being here in the Commonwealth, Andy's the one we would watch, but he made some tough decisions, but the tough decisions were always life-affirming decisions. And thank God he did, because I feel that if those decisions, those tough choices hadn't been made, more folks would have perished. As far as the Ohio resolution, I'm very much in favor of that as well. And you see, my faith teaches that life does not begin with conception. Life begins with birth. So I see absolutely nothing wrong with a person's right to choose, but realizing that making those decisions, it's not a frivolous decision at all. It's a very difficult decision, but the right should be given to a person to do that. I don't want to take away from any other religious traditions at all, But this is one of the great things about America. I believe very, very strongly in a separation between religion and state. Every religious community has the right to tell the adherents of that religion a path to follow. But the path is not in the house of worship. It should be from the house of worship and not dictated one way or the other by the government.
Well, in terms of trying to find that, lack of term balance, I do believe that religious faith influences almost every single one of our laws. It's a faith position for me that I should not put too much alcohol in my body and then go out driving, putting other people at risk. That's a faith position for me. It's a faith position for me that we should not be abusing young children. That's a faith position. And so my faith does influence, in a lot of ways, the way I apply, trying to live out in this community and society. And I can go on and on about that. But one of the things that I hope is going to come out of this is that even though we say we now have a divided government, that the governor very much spoke about the importance of trying to cooperate and find ways to work together. That's not been the position that was espoused after the election from certain members of the Republican Party, but I did see clearly the Secretary of State talk about the importance of working in a way, and he did work very closely with the governor. And so I have some hope for that, that there is a need to try to find ways to come closer to the center, whether it's left or right. And that's the one possibility. But given the supermajority of one of the parties, there is the ability to kind of force that particular agenda. But the message should be given, I would think, clearly by the voting public and the way the election went. They want that working together collaboratively and not going our own separate ways. So we'll see how that plays itself out over time in the next year or two or four.
So looking at what happened in Ohio with the passing of the recreational marijuana and access to abortion, and David, you mentioned it as well, do you all feel that this is a sweeping movement that will now appear on other ballots in other states in the next year?
I'll jump in and say, I think so. And here's why. We're seeing already Donald Trump is moving on his campaign. He's moving toward abortion because he feels it's an issue that they could lose in the election. So we're watching our politicians adjust. And I think that the pro-life movement fought very hard to overturn Roe. And we were, in one sense, almost shocked when it happened and was not prepared for what phase two of that meant. It meant it was going to become a state's decision. And I don't think that those involved in that fight, myself included, planned enough to be prepared for that phase two, where the states were going to be engaged with this question, this decision. So I think the battlefront has moved, the battle line has moved, in a sense, to the states, and I don't think the pro-life movement has prepared enough for this. So I think we are going to see this at least continue, that these states will deliberate this, and I think there will be a clarification, a distinction as states start to make these decisions.
Yeah. And it's hard to judge about this recreational marijuana. I mean, we have moved over time, even with the legal drinking age. That has moved over time. You know, people have, it was a time when it was allowed younger, and now it's 21, and are back to 21 pretty consistently. And so, sadly, that was a thing done because we thought it was safe for 18-year-olds, because they could fight, so they should be able to drink and drive. And that was the thing we learned to know. We need to move back again to 21. And I suspect there will be a lot of mistakes made with recreational marijuana, but hopefully we'll learn from them very quickly and learn how to best also regulate that. But in a lot of these states too, there was mentioned, well, this is a big new opportunity for income. Well, the fact is it doesn't generate more income, because actually it makes the illegal trade less a risk. And so it doesn't generate more income ordinarily. So now, curious to see how it just plays itself out. We'll be able to look back in a couple of years from now.
Yeah, but the problem is how much harm is going to be done while this plays out.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, the same issue was with tobacco, right? You know, 30, 40 years down the road, then we discovered how detrimental tobacco use was for communities. And the same is going to be true with recreational drugs as well.
Jamesetta, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the same is true with alcohol. We've gone through all of this. And for us to open this can of worms, I think just sets us up again for massive medical costs, also lawsuits, all of those type of things that we're going to have to deal with over the next 10, 15 years.
I was just going to say I completely agree with you on this. It is not good for our society. We've already seen what opioids are doing, and we can look historically back at other societies and cultures that have approved and integrated drug use, and it never ends well.
We all remember the Marlboro Man and
Yes.
jingles like Winston tastes good like a cigarette should. And I
Yeah.
remember both my parents after World War II, they took up smoking and smoked for decades. And
The Marlboro Man, let it be noted, passed away of lung cancer.
Lung
Did he
cancer.
really?
Yeah, yes, he did.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of the little known propagated facts. Yes.
trivia on this edition of Moral Side of the News.
And the commercials from the 50s, both on television and in magazines, you saw the doctor with the stethoscope and the jacket and the cigarette in his hand, saying, in the ad said something like, "Smoking is healthy for you."
Oh my.
Well, one thing to be curious to see, recreational marijuana advertising. I mean, we'll see. I would assume if it's legal, therefore you can advertise. Wonder how that'll play itself out.
I remember ads, even Ronald Reagan in a magazine, and Charlton Heston, people of that nature, lighting up and showing
The
us
cigarettes,
it's
yeah.
the
The
right thing to do,
cigarettes,
cigarettes.
yeah,
Yeah, not
cigarettes.
marijuana. but
No,
cigarettes.
no, the cigarettes.
But
yeah.
we'll see where that goes. You're about halfway through this edition of Moral Side of the News, and thank you for watching and listening to us this weekend. Topic 2, November weather is upon us, but we're warned not to be fooled by any cool-off like we're experiencing this weekend. The European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service says it's virtually certain that 2023 will be the hottest year in observational history. Scientists predict severe heat waves will be more frequent, and also so will be periods of precipitation and drought. So panel, climate change and what we should be doing, not only as a nation, but as individuals, it's another big focus, and it's a big topic many people are talking about.
I think the first thing is we have to acknowledge that there is global warming, and that our weather and all of the other catastrophic events that we're having is a result of, I believe, global warming. And there are things that we need to do as far as educating, I think, our people on what that means, how we can become more environmentally aware, and just start implementing small things, even within our churches, implementing those small things that will make a difference, teaching our congregants what it means to live out a safer environment. And it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse if we don't do something.
Our maps are going to change. Our kids live in Florida, and place where we stayed was on the ocean. And in the last 10 years, it used to be you could walk out and you saw the ocean. In the last 10 years, there was a berm that was constructed between where we lived and the beach, and it's about a 10 to 20 foot berm, and it's going to hopefully hold back the sea, but for how long? And iconic places like South Florida, like New York Harbor, are going to be affected because the global warming is causing the polar ice caps to melt. And that water is going somewhere. And the problem is it's going to just upset those communities more than we can imagine. And we need to do something immediately so that we can save what we built up.
Well, the starting point for me is, again, creation is God's gift to us, and we are to be stewards of it and care for it. And I think that to admit, first off, we're in this situation right now because of choices we have made. We're here because of things that we valued or didn't value more importantly than care for the world and care for the climate. We value comfort, or we value profit, or whatever it may be, and that's something more important. And if I have to make some sacrifices, like adjusting my thermostat, or recycling, or things like that, or charge more for certain goods, that's just too much for me to have to do, so let's just keep it the way it is. And it's not going to be my problem, it's going to be somebody else's problem down the road. And that's where we're at right now, from kicking the can down the road so much. And I know that I try to be very intentional about a lot of decisions that I make. I'm deeply committed to trying to recycle in the house in which I live and trying to work on things like that. I do try to keep the thermostat up, in the summertime and lower in the wintertime, to try to keep my own little contribution to the carbon footprint going on out here. But these are choices I make. And you try to influence others, but again, those are individual choices people make. I know that with my tradition, that our Holy Father, Pope Francis, has made a number of major significant contributions using faith as a perspective why we should be taking better care of the world around us. And some big climate change conferences going, international ones, and he's attempting to make sure he's present at that as well, to show not just an economic, but it's a faith point of view. And here we are, moral side of the news. The climate change is a moral issue, and moral choices have to be made.
And the sin is God has given us stewardship,
Yes.
and taking that for granted and
Yes.
blowing it off, that's a sin.
Yes, no question.
But the other problem is that corporations or businesses are not supportive and at large in doing something about the environment. In my community in the West End, you can't get recycled items picked up. Why is that? No, you can't. We've tried to get recycle bins throughout the neighborhoods in the businesses there, and
You're kidding.
No, you cannot. So how do you encourage environmental issues such as this if there's a problem with I call it environmental justice, when we have issues with plant smell, toxic smells, and when you have issues where there are no charging stations, and we have the most amount of bus traffic, but the bus traffic is gas and not electric. So there is an issue with how companies, large companies, are treating this, and what they can do to help communities to be more responsible in taking care of God's creation.
Well, I don't believe this is the existential crisis it's being billed as. I do agree on the stewardship. Let me start there. I think all of us in our traditions agree on the stewardship aspect. God has given us this world. We are called to be stewards, and I think that's important. That's a whole conversation. But I think that it's sort of being fronted as this existential crisis. And I don't think that's true for a couple reasons. One, we could talk about the science. There's not agreement inherently on this as an issue, or at least why the globe is warming, or why things are happening the way they're doing, or the amount to which humanity's causing these issues. But a big part of it is just my faith. I don't believe it's an existential crisis because the Bible does not teach that the world is going to end at humanity's hands or because we have misused the globe. The Bible actually teaches a very different end, that God is sovereign, that he's in control. And so that does not excuse poor stewardship. I want to be clear about that. But it also means that I don't come at this from a place of panic. And I think that there's a lot of that right now. People trying to produce sort of a panic or a fear about global warming. And I don't think it's a good way for us to approach these questions. And I think they're also sort of often approving groupthink or pushing past dissenting voices because there's a desire to try to see progress. So yeah, I'm concerned about it, and I don't think it's this existential crisis that's being pitched.
So if we put on our George Jetson's hats for a minute and think about the future, 10 years, the governor's platform was that massive battery plant in Glendale, Kentucky that's going to build electric car batteries. Do you see yourself in 10 years driving an electric car and the world's going to be a different place, or is that too far down the road?
Well, I'm driving a hybrid intentionally right now. That's
Me
an
too.
intentional choice I make. And
Yeah.
So 10 years from now, I could see myself in an electric car. Of course, I'll be older. 10 years from now, I will be retired, when I'm 10 years from now, and I won't be as active and probably not taking as long trips. So it would make more sense to me. But I can see myself, yes.
Yes, I already do. I have a hybrid as well, and I imagine the next vehicle I purchase will be all electric.
Yep, one of our cars is a hybrid, and I could definitely see myself driving either a hybrid or electric in 10 years. And I hope it doesn't have to be a self-driving car.
I'd be thrilled to own a Tesla. We'll see if they can get out of what they need to make it work, but it'd be nice.
We've got about a minute and a half left. I want to finish with this topic. We're planning our Thanksgiving menus now, but Christmas is all around us. Stores were decorated weeks ago, and radio stations are playing round-the-clock holiday songs. Too much too soon, or just what we need this time of year? Your thoughts? 90 seconds left.
Well, if my wife were on, she'd tell you for sure it's too soon. I'm okay with it. I'm ready for the Christmas music.
I'm happy with Thanksgiving, and those things, but I would rather wait until I get through Advent, to be deeply into the Christmas season. So
I think it just gives a spirit of hope for me. And so I love Christmas, and the sooner we can start celebrating, the better it is. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to put up Christmas decorations and all of that right now, but I do enjoy listening to the Christmas music and just finding hope in the season that is coming.
Hanukkah preparations?
Well, they're minimal at best, but I think creating hope and a sense of community are so important, especially since we just got off this election cycle, and the presidential election cycle seems to be never-ending and relentless.
And I'll have to cut you off right there. We're out of time on this edition of Moral Side of the News. Thanks to our panel. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll be back again next week. So long for now.
Bye.